I want to discuss the criminal code's handling of the issue of theft, and particularly talk about the statute relating to theft, which is section 322 of the criminal code, and ensure that we've discussed the importance of this section to a security guard, particularly because in this section we are speaking about property crimes, and a security guard, to a degree, is certainly concerned about the possibility of property crimes occurring. And what we'll focus on in this section of our discussion will have more to do with the field of retail loss prevention, or just loss prevention in its casual term, as it applies to a security guard. So let's start by analyzing section 322 of the criminal code. We'll read it together, and I want to make sure that it's clear to us. Section 322, subsection 1. Everyone commits theft who fraudulently and without color of right takes, or fraudulently and without color of right converts to his use or to the use of another person anything, whether animate or inanimate, with intent. A, to deprive temporarily or absolutely the owner of it, or a person who has a special property or interest in it, of the thing or of his property or interest in it. B, to pledge it or deposit it as security. C, to act with it under a condition with respect to its return that the person who parts with it may be unable to perform. Or D, to deal with it in such a manner that it cannot be restored in the condition in which it was at the time it was taken or converted. So section 322, subsection 1, speaks about different permutations of how a theft can take place, and it applies both to animate, meaning living objects, and inanimate objects. And the fact is that the subsection speaks about what a thief does, emphasizing with intent, and that's contained as part of the wording in subsection 1. When the thief with intent does one of the things that are discussed within the various sections of this subsection, the various parts of this subsection, he or she is committing an act of theft. Subsection 2 of the criminal code is very important for us to understand, because it discusses the point at which a theft has actually taken place. Now, if I were to ask you, when does somebody commit theft, without looking at the criminal code, instinctively answering, you might say, well, when he gets away with the item that he stole, and that's not what the criminal code says. So subsection 2 of the code reads as follows. A person commits theft when, with intent to steal anything, he moves it, or causes it to move, or to be moved, or begins to cause it to become movable. It's very important for us to understand that the theft is not considered to have taken place when the act is finalized, when the thief gets away with the stolen merchandise. Rather, the thief is considered to have committed the theft at such point as he has begun to act upon an object with the intention of stealing that object. He causes it to move or to become movable. So it is a subtle point, but an important one that tells you if somebody has stolen something, it's not an attempt to commit an offense, it is the offense of theft. The criminal code doesn't speak about attempted theft at this junction. Subsection 3 of the code, of 322 of the code, specifies a taking or conversion of anything may be fraudulent, notwithstanding that it is effected without secrecy or attempted concealment. So the point is that the thief might take something in broad daylight and out in the open. It doesn't make it any less a theft because he didn't attempt to conceal, to hide the action that he is engaging in. Subsection 4 of 322 reads, For the purpose of this act, the question whether anything that is converted is taken for the purpose of conversion, or whether it is at the time it is converted in the lawful possession of the person who converts it, is not material. So theft really is an unlawful conversion, taking something of value belonging to somebody else for the benefit of the thief. And the fact is that even if somebody had an object in their possession, they still can have committed a theft in relation to that object by acting upon it in such a way as described in subsection 1. And finally, sub 5 reads as follows, and this pertains to an animal. For the purpose of this section, a person who has a wild living creature in captivity shall be deemed to have a special property or interest in it while it is in captivity and after it has escaped from captivity. So it's quite possible that an individual, a thief, steals an animal, whether it's livestock or any other sort of an animal, the owner of that animal does have a special property or interest in that animal. So section 322 of the code discusses thefts in sort of all its forms. It's important for us to be able to dissect, to refer to understand what Section 322 is actually referring to and how it applies. Speaking as to how it applies, I want to go a step further, and I particularly want to address the issue of retail loss prevention. A security guard may be part of an LP or a loss prevention team. It may be part of his or her duties. It may be all of their duties. What I really want to make sure is clear is how we would think about, regard, or apply Section 322 in a retail environment, because a retail environment is a little bit different from virtually any other type of environment where a theft can take place. And what I want you to understand is, by its nature, a retail environment invites customers, invites people into the premises with the express intention of enticing them, attracting them to look at and to purchase items sold by that retail environment. So if I am a store owner, I invite customers into the store and I say, here, take a look at what we have here, try it on if you like, see whether it suits your purposes, whether it's something that you want to buy. And then the intention or the understanding is, if you decide that you want to purchase that item or you want that item, take it up to the cash register and pay for it before you leave. So the retail store invites individuals to come in, to look around, to try things on, hoping or intending that if they choose to take that object, they will pay for it before leaving the store. Since we have just defined Section 322 of the Criminal Code, particularly subsection 2, which speaks about the point at which theft takes place, I want you to understand that it's a little bit more difficult to apply this section, and particularly the subsection, in a retail environment than it might in any other sort of environment. If Section 322 says, sub 2 says, a person commits theft when, with intent to steal anything, he moves it or causes it to move or to be moved or begins to cause it to become movable, let's see how that might work or what the difficulty might be in a retail environment. Imagine a customer in a department store walking around the various displays, taking an object from the display carried by the store and placing this object in his or her pocket. The question is, did the individual steal the object? Now, the application of Section 322, and particularly sub 2, would say that if the individual moved that object or caused it to become movable with the intent to commit a theft, then he or she certainly has. But the truth is, how can we possibly demonstrate intent in a retail environment? Think about the circumstances of the situation in this way. Imagine that a retail loss prevention guard were to have seen this action of a thief taking an object and placing it in his or her pocket, and decides to take it upon themselves to approach that individual, or maybe even make an allegation or an accusation of theft. The guard would say, "You have stolen an object, you put it into your pocket," but the guard would be wrong. And the reason the guard would be wrong is that it would be absolutely impossible at this stage to prove that the individual had any intention of stealing. Now, I want to go to a different section of our materials for a second. I want to talk about the issue of criminal prosecution and explain this. The Crown, in any criminal prosecution in Canada, has an obligation to prove the guilt of an accused beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt is a threshold that the Crown has to prove. The fact is that if they fail to prove the action, the offense, the theft, to that degree beyond a reasonable doubt, then the accused will be acquitted of the offense. How could it be any other way? So if I make an accusation against the individual and say, "Hey, you stole that object because you put it into your pocket," there is an easy defense, an obvious defense the individual will invoke, and that is, "Well, I intended to pay for it. I was walking around the store, and I'm looking at other objects, and that's why I put this in my pocket. I intended to take it out of my pocket and pay for it before I left the store." And the fact is that if this is as allegation, and certainly we don't expect people to put things in their pockets when they're shopping in a retail environment, but if this is the defense that he has, how can it be refuted? In other words, the reasonableness of that defense would make it impossible to convince a judge the individual is guilty of theft beyond a reasonable doubt. So whereas ordinarily a criminal offense is made up of the two elements actus reus and mens rea, and you know already actus reus is the guilty act, the action which constitutes the offense. Mens rea is the intent to commit the offense. Ordinarily a criminal offense is made up of those two elements. In a retail environment, we have to do things a little bit differently. And rather than looking at actus reus and mens rea as the elements of the offense, in this particular situation, we convert those two elements into three completely separate elements that by their existence, by their occurrence, demonstrate the intent of the accused. So the three elements that we have to witness in a retail environment are as follows. Number one is referred to as the element of selection. Selection means that the security guard, if he or she intends to make an apprehension, must be certain that he or she has witnessed the individual, the thief, the accused, actually choosing the object that he or she has stolen, and the guard has seen the individual take the object off the store's display or the shelf, and can attest absolutely that the object itself belongs to the store. You cannot halfway see the element of selection. If a thief, a potential thief, a shopper, passes a display case, and you know there was an item on display a moment ago, and after that thief or that individual has passed the display, the item is gone. If you did not see the element of selection, him actually choosing, reaching over and taking the object you believe belongs to the store, then you do not have grounds to ever apprehend the individual. There's no way that we will be able to demonstrate theft, the criminal offense of theft, in this particular situation. So you will always be admonished, advised, unless you see the element of selection, you see the thief actually reaching up, over, down, around, and choosing the object that he or she intends to steal, you cannot prove that the theft has or will take place. So element number one is selection. Element number two is referred to as concealment. Concealment is the act of hiding that object somewhere on his person or somewhere in his belongings. You must see the shoplifter, the thief, place the object either in a pocket or in a bag or in some other part of their person or their belongings. And there are a number of things that emanate, that stem from this issue of selection. Number one, the issue of concealment. Number one, unless you've seen the concealment, there is no definitive way for you to know that the individual still has that object in his possession. If you don't know where it's hidden, then you don't know that the potential thief potentially may have thrown the object out, discarded it before the apprehension. So unless you see concealment and you know exactly where the object is hidden, you will never be able to approach or to make an apprehension or even think about detaining a suspect or making an allegation of theft. So concealment is necessary, is important for you, A, to ensure that you know the object is in his possession and where in his possession it is, and to ensure that he or she hasn't discarded that object without you being aware of it. The third element is of great importance before ever making an apprehension. The third element is referred to as evasion of payment. Evasion of payment is the element that is necessary to be able to prove theft on the part of a shoplifter, and it occurs this way, and it can never occur. Evasion of payment can never occur within the confines of a store or retail environment. The thief must pass beyond the last possible point at which he or she could have paid for the object, and having passed that point, they clearly demonstrate they have no intention of paying for the object. So evasion of payment can never actually occur inside of the store. If a thief, a potential thief, a possible thief was apprehended or detained anywhere within the confines of the store, I want you to remember that he or she can easily tell you, well, I intended to pay for the object, and you simply didn't give me a chance to do so. And even if he has passed a cash register or a line of cashiers, he might say, well, there was a display or there was some other thing that I wanted to take a look at. I intended to come back and pay for the object. So the evasion of payment can never actually occur anywhere inside of the store. The thief has to be given every opportunity to pay for the object if he intends to do so, and only once the individual has walked past the last possible point at which he or she could have paid for the object, which generally means outside of the store, can you demonstrate the actus reus and mens rea, not only the theft, but the intent to have stolen. If a thief is ever apprehended inside of a store, if he's ever approached or she's ever approached inside of the store, it would be the worst possible thing that can happen, simply because there is no way for a security guard to demonstrate or prove that there actually was a theft in this instance or circumstance. So the three elements that we need to witness are: number one, selection. You have to ensure that you've seen the object, the thief steal the object, and you know that it belongs to the store. The concealment, which is watching the thief hide the stolen object somewhere on his person or in his belongings. And by the way, I want to add, in relation to the issue of concealment, one of the things that concerns us is that a thief not discard a stolen object without us being in a position to have seen him discard that object, which means that if you don't know exactly where the object is hidden, you have no way to confirm, to be satisfied or positive that he or she did not hide or drop the object when you weren't watching. Concealment goes beyond simply knowing where the object is. It also it also helps ensure that as we continue to maintain observation of the subjects from the time that he committed the offense until the time of the apprehension, he or she hasn't had an opportunity to discard the object. And finally, evasion of payment. We've spoken about he has passed the last possible point at which he or she, the thief, could have paid for the object. Having passed that point, they clearly demonstrate they have no intention whatsoever of paying for that object. Those are the issues that I want you to be aware of in relation to theft as applied to a retail environment. And in fact, theft in general, as a component of what a security guard deals with. So you should know that it's easier to witness or to prove a theft outside of a retail environment. If somebody were to come into my premises, pick up an object and walk out with it, that clearly is an act of theft, or at least it's easier for us to prove that it's an act of theft in a retail environment. The problems are as we have discussed.